All right, everyone. We are back in my filthy garage again. This time for a different purpose. Today, my 124 Abarth Spider is getting her inaugural oil change, which on these cars is supposedly a little bit more difficult than it is on most vehicles. But if you guys come with me today, you'll find out just how true that is. First, a few things that you'll need. Need some jack stands. Because of the placement of the oil pan on this vehicle, you really need to have it level to be able to drain the oil properly. Obviously, you'll need a jack. And really a low profile jack would be preferable. This should just cut the mustard right now. But once I lower this a little bit, probably about an inch is what I'm thinking, that jack stand that jack is probably not going to cut the mustard anymore. Obviously, you'll need an oil drain pan. You'll need some gnarly oil rags. And a clean funnel is always necessary. Don't want to put nasty stuff into your freshly oiled motor. You'll need an oil filter. This is a Napa, but it is in fact made by Wix, and really the part number is the same, except for there's a 5 in front of the Wix filter. You'll need oil, which, let me tell you, at least in my area, was not easy to find. This is one of the, I believe, 3 recommended oils. You can find those on the Fiat 124 website, the 124 forum. Really great site, really recommend it. Tons of knowledge there. And in fact, everything I'm relaying to you today, I pulled from the 124 Spider forum. I believe that's correct. I'll put the link in the description for you. Anyhow, you need 5W40. And it must meet, and I don't remember what it is, I'll put that in the link as well, a specific specification. But it is not super easy to find, at least in my area. I went with the Valvoline Sin Power, mostly because that was the only one I could find. You'll need a torque wrench. You will need a 12mm socket, a 13mm socket, and a 1 1/8 or 27mm socket. This is for the top of the oil filter. That's for the oil drain plug, and that is to get off the skid plate / under engine cover. I always think of skid plates as being 4-wheel drive, but that's kind of what it is just an underbody covering, really. And a regular socket for taking off the skid plate bolts. And not always, I should, but I like to have some rubber gloves so that I don't have to spend the next few days with filthy hands. Not that that's a big deal, but it can come in handy, especially if you have any cuts or anything on your hands, which seems like I always do. So that's about it, guys, for this portion. Laid out the stuff that you need, and I'm going to go ahead and jack up the vehicle. Now, I will try and get some pictures on here to show you what the proper jacking points and what the proper jack stand points are on this vehicle. So I'll try to get those injected into the video. If for some reason I can't, then I will go ahead and put links to where you can find that in the video description. So you know in a minute. Alright guys, the vehicle is all jacked up now, as you can see. Now those of you who are astute or know the proper methodology will notice that I did not utilize the jacking points, or the, sorry, jack stand points that is recommended. Those are actually here underneath the side sills. And here you can see it. Now, this is all plastic. And I know it is connected to the frame, but I see no way that you could utilize these and not break the plastic points in there. So I went with a different method. So let's see if we can get you guys a good view here of this. So under the front, I don't know, doesn't look like you can see it that well, but that's where the jacking point is. And on either side, there's a frame box where your A-arms are connected to. And that looked like a good, strong point in the front subframe. So they are not touching the A-arms. They're just on the frame itself. Now, we'll go ahead and come on out. Go around to the rear. And the jack is sitting at the correct factory jack point, which I also use for the front for lifting. Which is on that cross member there for the rear suspension. And I went ahead and placed the jacks here on the frame rail of each side of the vehicle. Again, seemed like a, number one, more sturdy place. And definitely, you know, at least here, I'm not going to do any damage to the side sills. However, I am not responsible if you utilize my jacking points and something happens to you. I am not a professional mechanic, and in all likelihood, a total idiot. So I wouldn't recommend following my lead on that. Just giving you the reasons why I did what I did. So now, I'm going to get underneath the vehicle, which gets tougher the older I get. And we're going to start taking out these bolts that go all the way around and cover the bottom of the engine. So once I get those out, I'll give you guys another view. Alright guys, the plate is off. Now you can see your oil pan. And this bolt right here, try to focus in on that. That bolt on the passenger side of the oil pan is your drain plug. So I'm going to go ahead and take that out and drain it. Now you can also, get a look here at the covering or skid plate, if you prefer, underneath the oil pan, or sorry, yeah, that goes underneath the oil pan and protects it. And I suspect is there for aerodynamic purposes as well on this particular vehicle. There are the 9 bolts that came out. All of them have this greenish, you know, kind of aquamarine, I suppose you'd call that, hue to them, and make them pretty easy to identify as being the bolts that go in this bad boy. So you shouldn't have any problems with mixing it up and putting the wrong stuff, or taking off the wrong bolts, or putting the wrong bolts back in. Alright, go ahead and pause this, and I'm going to drain the oil. Alright guys, you can see got the oil draining out there into my pan. So I'll give it some time, make sure it all gets out. Looks pretty gnarly, especially considering I've only got about 3,000 miles on this. But it is its first oil change, so hopefully the next time I do it, the oil won't be so gnarly looking. Won't be quite so black. Anyhow, so another thing for you here. This is the oil plug. It goes in the oil pan, and you'll see this little orange seal here. Phew. I don't know if it'll focus right, but there's a little orange seal around and kind of fits up in the oil plug. So you might want to, take that off. I'll take it off and clean it and get a little bit of new oil on it to make sure the seal's good and to keep it nice and moisturized. But you don't want to lose that little puppy. Alright, well, once the oil's done draining, we'll go to the next step. Alright guys, onward with the oil change here. You will notice, see if I can get the light down in there and give you a good look. That is where the oil filter is located. So you can see the top of the engine here and that Fiat emblem, which is the last one to be stricken from the vehicle. Unfortunately, there's no good option right now for doing that. So for the time being, it stays. But down in there is the oil filter. Such a convenient place. Now, just so you're aware, the reason the oil filter is in that place is that, as many of you probably already know, this uses the same 1.4 liter multi-air turbo as the Abarth 500 does. So, really was originally designed to be a transverse mounted motor for front wheel drive, and rather than re-engineer placement of certain items, they just went ahead and tossed it in here, mounted the correct way. But it does make certain things a little bit of a pain. Now, really the only thing you have to remove to get to that oil filter is this little connector right here I'm pointing at. That is your purge valve solenoid wiring. And it's relatively simple. I'll see if I can do it with one hand while I got the camera here. You're going to wedge your fingernail into the bottom and pop out the little yellow tab. It slides downward. Then press in the center, pull down, and voila. So now we'll just kind of set that out of the way here, which is probably easier said than done. It's a little bit fidgety. Anyway, now I can get to this a little better. Let's see if I can't put this somewhere else. There we go. That's a little more out of the way. So now I'm going to go ahead and grab my wrench and my 1 1/8 socket. You will need an extension for this, gentlemen. It's down there a bit. I'm going to go ahead and get that on. And I'm going to go ahead and pause it now while I remove the oil filter and catch you in a minute. Alright guys, oil filter is out. As you can see, it is very fidgety to get that out of there. You have to get a little movement out of this pipe here and kind of just tilt and squeeze it and fidget it out of there. Now if you have put on a aftermarket air intake, then you'll have to remove that from the turbo here before you can get that out. But for the time being, mine's stock, so I can fidget it out of there. I'll come down here. We'll see our old oil filter and our new oil filter and seal. So you want to pull the old oil filter out. There it is. Then we want to remove the seal. I may have to put the phone down for a moment to get the old seal off. In fact, I definitely will. But there you can see the old seal, and I will be replacing it with the new one before reinserting the new oil filter. Now, it kind of clips in, so the part here with the clips on it goes into the top of the oil filter here. So you can see with the old one, it's just like that, snaps in. So anyway, I'll be right back because that's going to be a bit fidgety to get the old seal off, and then we'll keep going. All right, I have successfully taken the old seal off, taking out the old oil filter, put the new oil filter in along with the new seal, and rub just a bit of oil on it just to keep it nice and moisturized so it seals well and it doesn't dry out on you. Now we're going to go ahead and put that back in. And I'm going to see if I can get this started with one hand, but it is very fidgety. So I don't know if that's going to be possible. Nope. I'll be right back once I get it on. Alright guys, oil filter is back in its home and torqued to 18.4 foot-pounds or 25 nanometers. Had to do the conversion. Fortunately found it online. And reinstalled the purge valve solenoid, electrical connector there, which is just the reverse of taking it off. You just push it back on, it snaps into place, and push up on the bottom of the little yellow tab. So now that the top end's all buttoned up, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall my drain plug. Some folks do this first. I like to do it last before I add the oil, just because that gives it plenty of time to drain every drop of oil that you can out of it. And you have other stuff to do, so you might as well give it time to do it. Alright, I'll be right back. Okay everybody, we're in the home stretch. I have reinstalled the drain plug and torqued it to 19 foot-pounds, which is the recommended. Reinstalled the skid plate and its 9 bolts. And those I just did snug. There's no real torque specs to be found for those. And seems kind of extraneous anyway for that particular item. And now I'm going to go ahead and add my oil here. And I've got my funnel and a rag to hopefully catch any errant oil. Now I'm going to put in about 3.5 to 3 3/4 quarts. It calls for 4. But I'll check my dipstick after that and make sure that I don't overfill. You really don't want to overfill your motor. It's not good. So I'll do that and check it. And once it's at exactly full, we'll go ahead and button this one up. Alright folks, as you can see, she's all buttoned up. I went ahead and ran the vehicle for about 5 to 10 minutes 3 times and let it set and check the oil level again to make certain that I had the right oil level in the car. And as you can see here, I actually went through about 3 3/4 roughly quarts of oil that I added to it to get it full. Like I said earlier, the last thing you want to do is overfill the car. You'll start popping seals and leaking oil, and that's never a good thing. So now that it's all buttoned up and ready to go, I do want to mention one last thing. If you attempt to reset the oil change interval mileage on the infotainment system, it just won't do it. It'll just keep showing flexible, and I'll show you that right now. There is the method of trying to put the car to on, which is the next level right before you start it up, and to press the gas pedal 3 times slowly and then turn it off. That didn't seem to do anything for me either. For whatever reason, that just didn't work out. So I'll show you here. You go to the applications and scroll to, there you go, scroll to maintenance. So I'm getting not a lot of cooperation out of this thing right now. There we go. Scroll to your maintenance. You go to oil change, click that, and it just says flexible. And I can click the button down, move it around, do whatever I want, and I cannot change, unfortunately, that oil change interval. So if anybody knows a fix for that, please, by all means, let me know in the comments below. I'll appreciate it. Be good to know why. Can't quite get that to work. But all in all, a success. And feel a lot better now that she's had her first oil change. So now it's time for the best part, guys. The celebration of a job well done. I'll be doing that with some Macallan Scotch. So, in the meantime, hopefully you guys found this informative or slightly entertaining. And I am going to enjoy some Scotch and stare at my car. See you next time.